Coogs house. After a dominant win in Stillwater, Oklahoma, Houston has developed a pair of incredible receiving threats, but which one of those is benefiting the other one?
You are Locked On Cougs, your daily podcast on the Houston Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Coogs, daily podcast about your Houston Cougars. I'm your host, Houston-born teacher and coach Parker Ainsworth, and whether a Houston fan or just a hater who came to stop by, thank you for making Locked On Coogs your first listen of the day. Please make sure to listen each and every day here at Locked On Coogs. And we're doing the conversation and you don't know what to say, tell us in the comments down below. Well, I was going to ask about your favorite homecoming thing, something about homecoming, because Houston has their homecoming football game this Saturday with the University of Arizona coming to town. But my mind is also currently on Oklahoma State. So we're going to talk about them in a second. Today's show is brought to you by GameTime. They'll get you into the game. Lab tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I got more on that fun later. But first, foremost, I want to get into after watching last weekend's game a second time, I think it's safe to say Houston's got great receiving threats, but which one in the yin and yang here is kind of helping their one out? I want to talk in the second segment about if the offensive line is better or looked better, or maybe both, and if it matters in the second segment. And last but not least, I'm going to give a snapshot of my first thoughts on watching some of Arizona, looking at next week's game. But first, look, it is no secret that Tanner Koziol and Amare Thomas are the two top receiving threats on this football team right now. I could argue about how that's because Boogie Johnson's getting a lot of defensive eyes and all that, and Boogie may be the better pro prospect of the true receivers, but that's not here nor there. This season, in terms of production, it has thus far been Amare Thomas and Tanner Koziol, and that is a testament to, frankly, a lot of things working. Last weekend, Amare Thomas had the gigantic game, over 150 yards and all that, and I think it raised the question is, which one of these guys is actually helping the other one out in terms of dictating coverages, right? Because we talked in the show a long time about how at 6'7", 6'8", 240, 250 pounds, Tanner Koziol is kind of shifting what teams to do in terms of coverage. But clearly, at some point in the football game last week, you'd have thought that they'd have flipped the script there and start shifting their coverage to cover Amare Thomas. And it's not his first week leading the team in catches. And so how that balances in, because frankly, look, Koziol's got 38 targets. Amare Thomas has 36 targets. The next highest is Boogie, Stephon Boogie Johnson at 24, right? That's a big gap. Amare Thomas has 441 yards in the year. Tanner Koziol has 310 yards. Both have a pair of touchdowns. They lead in those as well. And I think as you look at this, there are guys that really complement each other well. And I understand people hate the transfer portal and hate this and the newness and da 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 da. This also feels like weirdly a factor of like modern college football. We have a new quarterback, a new receiver, and a new star tight end that are still growing into one another, and a new offensive coordinator, right? And all playing together against new offenses. And again, you don't. I said this against Stephen Austin. I said against Rice. You don't get preseason games in college. You don't get practices against other opponents in college football, right? And so this has kind of been a growth period, the first half of the season. As we're at the midway point, I do think it's worth pointing out that they're kind of developing some tendencies here, right? Right now, Amare Thomas is kind of dominating the middle third of the field, with Tanner Koziol kind of operating the outer thirds. This is on display completely in the Oklahoma State game. Every single one of Amare Thomas's catches in the Oklahoma State game was over that middle third of the field. Like if you divide the field, the 53 and a third into thirds, it's that middle third of the field. It's Amare Thomas's area, right? All of his catches and targets were in that area of the field. Even, all one of his targets was like at the edge. He then frankly he like is running an out route, catches it, and before he gets out to the outer third, he whips back up to the middle of the field between the two safeties. That's really something he like clearly has a focus on, right? He also, for its worth, had 5 targets of over 10 yards at the catch point, meaning balls intended to be caught more than 10 yards down the field play. Uh, Tanner Koziol, on the inverse, had of his 7 targets in the Oklahoma State game, only 2 of his were in the middle of the field, and they were both short. Uh, most of Tanner Koziol's targets are under the 10-yard marker. Only one of his in the Oklahoma State game was passed, and that kind of trend tracks of the season too. Of his 36 targets, Amare Thomas's uh, only had 6 not in the middle third, so 30 of his 36 are in that middle third, and then 19 of his 36 targets are over 10 yards at the catch point. That's more than half, right? Of Tanner Koziol, 19 of his 38 are in the middle of the field, or not in the middle of the field, but just 6 are past the 10-yard catch point. I think the fact that you see that from Koziol's indicative of a shift. We've seen that kind of more and more. He becomes more of the outer thirds guy as the year has gone on. And I wonder if that shift has been intentional. I guess what I'm proposing, right? Have they shifted to making Tanner Koziol this outer thirds guy to kind of occupy and pull down corners, pull out linebackers, move over safeties if they're playing too high or whatever, and make like focus on him to open up the middle for Amare Thomas, or is Amare Thomas diverting enough traffic to the middle of the field to open up Tanner Koziol? Personally, my honest opinion, watching it live for 6 games now, is that it's really defense is shifting to be ready to rally and tackle Tanner Koziol because he's such a unique, talented athlete, right? That Amare Thomas kind of gets the benefit of the doubt in a lot of ways. I also think, again, we mentioned Stephon Boogie Johnson is a guy that has real pro upside, has 24 targets thus far this season, and was probably wide receiver one on most people's charts coming into the season. He's occupying a lot of attention too. He doesn't seem to have quite the same give as far as where he's going to end up on the football field. Sometimes he's running deep on the sideline. Sometimes he's in the hook curl area. Sometimes he's over the middle. He does a lot of other things. His targets are more evenly spread out. His route tree is broader in that sense. But I wonder if between Boogie and Koziol occupying so many eyes, if that is, you can just spread, if you're Slade Nagel, you spread the field to open up Amare Thomas in these middle areas for the tune of over 150 yards last Saturday. Now, obviously, it's one thing to get the field opened up for you and another thing to make plays. I don't mean that as a slight of any kind. They're choosing him, frankly, in a deep receiver room to make those plays, right? Kobe Young, talented wide receiver. Harvey Broussard. So Harvey Broussard had a great game on Saturday. Talented wide receiver. Mekhi Muse, talented wide receiver. But they're choosing Amare Thomas, and that may be a Wegman connection. We talked about Connor Wegman and him having that connection back in Oregon State, right? When they needed first downs, they looked for Amare Thomas. When they needed first downs against Rice, they looked for Amare Thomas, right? That may be some sort of combination of all the factors, right? But Amare Thomas becoming your middle of the field threat with Tanner Koziol occupying those outer spots, and that's really shifting defenses away. And what will be next for this offense, the next evolution will be, okay, what opens up on that third backside check, right? When you come back to it, is it going to be a like flood out leak of McCary or a leak of Kobe Young or a leak of Dean Connors as a running back, right? Catching balls out of the backfield over there. What ends up shaking out for Houston on that backside third once you have Koziol on the front side and Amare Thomas in the middle, and the defense just starts to shift things over? What do you open up over the course of the season on that back third, and how quickly can you get to it given some of the issues having protection, right? And so we're going to talk about that offensive line in just 1 second. That is the second segment, but I want to say I think in watching it, this is still defenses shifting to Koziol. I know it doesn't matter because whoever catches the ball is a Houston Cougar moving the chains down the field. It was great to see the ball go through the air so many times, so effectively on Saturday. They don't need my advice. I say keep it up. I say keep it up. All right, I'll jump into the offensive line in 1 second. Before we get to that, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Wayfair, because when you're looking for places to fill up your place, Wayfair is the best place to do that. Now, holidays are going to be here before you know it. This is exciting. Getting home ready for guest celebrations can feel like a lot. Maybe you need more servingware or refreshing your guest room for people coming over for the holidays or whatever. Wayfair makes it easy to personalize your home for the holidays with a huge selection for every single style and budget with free and easy delivery. Even on big stuff, you get everything you need with the hustle or hassle of huge delivery fees. Now, I have to say, personally, we've been in this house a little over a year, and I feel like we were at Wayfair or at wayfair.com twice a week for the first 6 months. It's got the best things to fill up your house with all the kind of things you need. Best way to make sure that your house feels like a home in the most literal sense. Now get organized, refreshed, and stay ready for the holidays for way less. Head to wayfair.com right now. Shop all things home. That's Wayfair, WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every time. Today's show is also brought to you by over at FanDuel because the NFL season's officially been here, and FanDuel has this offer you do not want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, get $300 back in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you like $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, the line for Houston this weekend is at the time recording -1.5, 102 for the Houston money line, and over under 46.5. Things are going Coogs, but they're predicting a close, sloppy defensive field game. We'll talk more about why that could or couldn't happen in the last segment today. But FanDuel's place to get on the action. If you want to get on that action or more, head to FanDuel.com. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com. Download the FanDuel app today to get started. Parker Ainsworth locked on Coogs here. And one big talking point after Houston, Oklahoma State was that the offensive line is starting to look better. And I do think you're seeing the five fingers of the hand become a fist. Some ways the year goes on. Yes, you lose David Duquay early in the season for the rest of the season and longer. And ultimately that hurts in a lot of ways. And that this is not to diminish his impact. However, as far as the on the field product goes, even if his backup had been just as good, right? And if they were just as good, they probably wouldn't have been a backup, but I digress. Even if his backup had been just as good, um, you have to integrate that guy into the fold, right? Offensive lines work in cohesion with one another. It is half of your offensive players. The same way we talk about timing and route running and communication and nonverbal communication, all that kind of stuff between quarterbacks and receivers or whatever. All that also has to happen amongst your offensive line. Again, you get 6 or you get 11 players in the field. One of them takes the snap, 5 of them block for him. That's half the math there, right? Only 6 players in your offense are not offensive linemen, and frankly, oftentimes some of those guys are blocking as well. Now, I will say that it was interesting in looking at PFF scores after the game on Saturday. Those come out the next day, so it was Sunday or whatever, right? And you check those. I'm checking those out, frankly, often before my second rewatch. Kind of say like, oh, they think that guy had a better game than I did, or oh, we agree that that guy had a really good game. And I go back and I probably, if I'm being honest, consciously or unconsciously, I'm paying a more attentive eye to that guy, right? And PFF on their own grading, which is are you in the right place, doing the right thing at the right time, had both Dalton Merryman and Alvin Ebosele as their best pass blocking grades of the year against Oklahoma State on Saturday, right? That's better than FCS Stephen F. Austin. That's better than Rice. That's better than Oregon State. Obviously, Tech. That's better than everyone else. They played their best individual games against Oklahoma State. So first, I think after having been honestly a little embarrassed the week prior, you saw some guys that took it personally and got after it. Right? I think that's the first thing, that the guys took that personally and heard the criticism and took it to heart and used it as a tool. I think that's the first thing I noticed. The second thing is that I think some of that is they at this point in the season feel like they're doing that in the right place at the right time. They're understanding the scheme more. It's not week 1 anymore. It's not week 2 anymore. It's not live bullets for the first time. It's real cohesion happening there, right? Now, yes, while it's not like Oklahoma State are a bunch of world beaters, I wouldn't have told you Stephen F. Austin or Rice were either. And that's why I think it's a very interesting comparable measure. And you saw it come up in the time to throw a little bit. Now, time to throw can be skewed a little bit because sometimes it's pressures and sometimes it's just quarterbacks playing poorly or whatever. But The time to throw this week was 2.59 seconds, meaning between catching the snap and throwing the football, Conor Wegman was taking an average of 2.59 seconds. He also only got pressured 7 times. A week ago, they got pressured 21 times, and Conor Wegman's time to throw was 23 and a half, right? 2.35, so 23 and a half. Anyway, that's a lot faster and still getting pressured a lot. I would also stress that part of that number is that they also ran the ball a lot once the game got out of hand, try and make sure that they were mitigating injury and risk, and they bring on Zia and Chris Gramillion, and like, whew, bad news, got better, right? Now, I think the interesting thing about this past week's game was that you also had 2.7 seconds to throw when not blitzed. At high-end Division I football, teams have blitz breaks, meaning when the opponent blitzes, a receiver is reading the coverage mid route and they'll break off what they're doing to kind of occupy. Like if I'm running a hook, but I see that my linebacker nearest me is blitzing, I might turn that into a quick slant to be right in that window, right? Those kinds of things are like every Power 4 team runs them. I'd imagine every Group of 6 team does too. Frankly, I can speak from experience. Like Division 3 teams do that, right? Like it's not a complicated concept at college football level. I imagine North Shore and Katy and good high school teams do too, right? But the blitz breaks are interesting because typically that leads to having quicker throws, and thus the non-blitz throws are actually much longer. Obviously, there's also less pressure involved and all that, right? The non-blitzed time to throw was 2.77 seconds, which is a very comfortable pace for most quarterbacks. You want to be 2.75 to 2.9. Longer than that, your guys aren't open, frankly, right? What's interesting is that Texas Tech didn't have to blitz, and they were getting that kind of pressure, right? And so part of this is that you did not have the same defensive front in front of you, but I also think that there's a comfort there for Connor throwing against this. Now, as far as giving the offensive line credit where it's due, I think they played better and played a worse opponent. I think both things can be true in the passing game. In the run game, I don't think in the post game we quite gave Dean Connors enough credit. Watching the game back a second time, I don't think the 83 yards rushing he had does his game justice. I think commenting on it from he had 5.5 yards per carry does it a lot more justice. I mean, the like flying leap from 5.5 yards out, or whatever it was, it wasn't 5.5. However stupid far that jumping for the touchdown was crazy. And what's funny is like people, especially during like the Locked On Big 12 folk over, they all want to make him out to be Cam Scatabo and like a smaller Cam Scatabo. There's a lot of, I'm sure, connections that people want to make there. Truthfully, he's not that kind of running back. He's shifty. He's fast. He changes pace. He's agile. He makes leaps from multiple yards out and clears it, like a hurdle into the end zone. He's just yes, he can run over some guys too. But Cam Scatabo is the guy that's headbutting a brick wall before. Like, legitimately, there are videos of him headbutting brick walls for games. That was his MO. Dean Connors is smooth, man. It's not quite hard rock and jazz, but it feels like there's more of a difference between that. And I don't know that comparison's necessarily like the kind of moves he's making. Dean Connors is in the hole to put linebackers on the wrong sides of blocks as he's setting things up is elite. It's elite. And really, really impressed them on the second watch on Sunday. Game was on Saturday. I was too excited they were scoring touchdowns. But I really, really impressed with how smooth he is in the hole and how smooth he is in his actions. And he goes from like speed to power really fast in a way that like it's just also fluid. And we'll see what pro prospects and stuff like that look like. It doesn't feel like it's a thing people can learn. It feels very like he just kind of has that, and you can learn to be reading the holes pre-snap better, and you can work on your strength, work on your explosiveness, work on your high-end track speed. That evasiveness that he's got in him is a little bit different, and I thought it was on display a lot. And I don't think, again, people see, oh, he had 83 yards and a touchdown catch. Cool. Like, it's not that That's not enough. he had a lot more than that. And credit the offensive line for setting that kind of stuff up, right? Better week for them than they've had. I thought it was interesting again. Like they had this great week against an FBS opponent, not an FCS opponent like we played earlier this year. And that is a Power 4 opponent. And it's a bottom of the barrel Power 4 opponent, but it was a Power 4 opponent, whatever it's worth, right? Now, I want to talk about their next Power 4 opponent, that is Arizona, and kind of give my quick snapshot as I am diving into them more this week. Before we get into that, today's show is brought to you by our buddies over at Game Time because college football is back. Homecoming is back. Could not be more excited. Tailgates, rivalries, energy in the stands. There's just nothing like it. But sometimes actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices, checkout. That's why I use Game Time. We all use Game Time a lot of time because the best place to get tickets. It's bar. It's not even close. Bar none. The app gives the advantage back to the fans. The easiest way to score last minute tickets at the prices, best prices with no surprise fees. What you get is what you pay. I pulled this up before the game, before the show today, and I can get you in to the stadium for less than $30, right? At Game Time, and use our code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. But you can get the ticket itself, that's fees, everything, less than $30. You can get fifth row behind the visitor section for less than $45, right? You can get great seats to Houston, Arizona, 11 a.m. local time. Big, big deal in this one. Homecoming, celebrate your fellow alumni, have a great time with other Coogs, pack the stadium, wear red. Let's get bowl eligible this Saturday and do it in the most affordable way possible with Game Time. Take guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply again. It's promo code Locked On College, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Parker Ainsworth Locked On Coogs here, and Houston is opening up as a favorite again this week. Just a really slight one. At the time of recording, Houston's a 1.5 point favorite. The over/under is set at 46.5, and that feels like they're predicting an ugly game. It predicts to a couple teams in the mid-20s. A 24-21 kind of game. Maybe 27-20. I mean, you're looking at a low scoring for modern college football game with some ugliness in it. And Arizona has losses to BYU and Iowa State on their resume. They don't have a lot of great wins on their resume yet. I would point out that they almost beat BYU, and that would have been a great win. They were up late in that game, 24-14, and there was some weather stuff that kind of threw the whole chaos of that game off. Ultimately, Arizona lost at the end of that one, 33-27 in double overtime. BYU's got a great defense and a freshman quarterback, and I'm sure that the weather stuff and a chance to go kind of regroup and calm your quarterback down and talk to it helped them out a lot. Obviously, Houston walked into Arizona at their place last year, and you could have told me that Arizona's having a rough year last year because they were, and Arizona kind of put the beating on Houston. Now, that Arizona team had a top 5 pick wide receiver. This one does not. And I think that's a notable difference between the two. Obviously, same quarterback, though, for whatever that's worth. They do have 2 running backs. They run fairly evenly and fairly well. But I think this is still what I'd call a quarterback-led team. Noah Fifita, the veteran guy who I know he's not very big, but he seems to make big-time plays for them when he needs to. Impressive, but not impossible to stop, I think is the way I'd put him. He makes big plays, and so you're going to have to stay on top of him. But I mean, both in evidence by their 4-2 record so far this year and their record last year, and just his time as a quarterback in college. Noah Fifita can be stopped. I think I'll be interested to see what kind of things Austin Armstrong, defensive coordinator for Houston, draws up for him in this one. It feels like there's a couple tweaks and changes and a little bit different blitz, a little bit different that every week to make sure they're kind of preying on what the other team's doing while also sticking true to their to themselves. And so what do you see Houston doing this one? Now, I think this kind of game and watching, honestly, that I think it's the second best offensive line Houston's played this year. I don't think they're anywhere near quite. It's like Texas Tech, gap. Arizona offensive line, gap. To me, honestly, I'd go to Rice, but you don't want to hear that part. That's how I see the offensive line breakout that Houston played so far this year. Maybe Rice's is more of a product of what they do, to be fair, but this is a better offensive line that you've seen outside of Tech thus far this year. I do think I'm still confident Houston's defensive line will win the matchup, though. Koziol, again, we talk about it every week, is an NFL caliber player. He looks the part, man. Yeah, Jalen Garner is killing it in that front seven box, really kind of a front five box. Trevin McCutcheon is doing something every week that's like, holy crap, kind of athleticism. Eddie Walls has played better in the run all year long than anyone predicted. I just think the Houston's defensive front, even as good as the offensive line is, Arizona wins this matchup. And on the other side of the ball, I think intuitively, this feels like the best coverage unit that Houston's played. And I know that can be daunting to think about like how much trouble Houston had throwing the football against Texas Tech. However, the difference to me is this secondary does not have Texas Tech's defensive line in front of it, right? And I thought Houston had advantages in that Texas Tech secondary they could not exploit because the pass rush pressure. So it didn't matter, right? If they played 7-on-7, whole different game. They don't play 7-on-7, right? And I think this is a game where the skinny guys on the outside are more comparable, right? But the big guys up front aren't as good as Tex, and so I think you're going to see a more true to even matchup in this one. Now, I said in the second segment, I'll say it again. I think Houston's offensive line responded to the criticism of Texas Tech and of that game very well against Oklahoma State, and so how do they translate that into playing this one very well, right? And what do they do in this one? And so we'll see. We'll see how things go. On the whole, I wonder if you see them run the football more and kind of mitigate that even matchup on the outside and try and pound the rock. Fat Burnett, Jamarian Burnett is, another week post injury. He's playing on it now, so it's not quite as healthy as if he just took the break, but he's another week post injury. Dean Connors could have a big day again as well. Because both those guys involved. Obviously, Stacey Sneed was announced on Tuesday morning, or Monday morning. He's not going to be healthy for a couple weeks, but you have Connor Wigman and his legs sprinkled in to this. I've seen DJ Butler in worse spots. I think into Houston move this forward some with some run game kind of action. So we'll see what Houston does in there with all of that. But more on all that fun in the coming days and weeks. When we bring down Arizona all week long, trying to get connected. We just brought on a Leaf Tulane who does basketball stuff for us at Locked On. He's going to be covering Arizona this year. So we're going to try and get him on to talk college football as well, which I'm sure will be right up his alley. But seriously, I want to talk about U of A. I want to talk about Houston. I want to talk about this matchup this Saturday because Houston's looking to get bowl eligible for the first time in a couple of years. And man, oh man, would that be really, really freaking important. Now, we're here each and every day of the week, Locked On Coogs, Locked On Podcast Network means your team every single day. Go Coogs.